couple of days ago, Lil Uzi Vert dropped their latest album, Pink Tape. And it's been a long time coming. The last album that Uzi dropped was back in 2020 with Eternal Take, and even that one felt like it was a long time coming. So they have a track record of making fans wait. But now that this album's been out for a couple of days, and we've given it some listens, let's share some thoughts. First things first, the album kind of goes in many different directions, and that can kind of be a good and a bad thing, if that makes any sense. So, I mean, I guess one main thing to look at with this album, as well as every other album, is the track length and the runtime of the project. This album has 26 songs and a total runtime of about an hour and 27 minutes, so basically an hour and a half. That honestly feels a little long. Like, for me, I am totally fine with somebody releasing an album that's an hour and a half long if it makes sense to do so. If there's a storyline or a theme that gets carried on throughout the entire project, totally. However, when it's more of a collection of songs that you've recorded over time and you just kind of sequence them in a certain way, and like, I mean, the album is kind of segmented in that regard, but if there's, again, no storyline and it's more of a playlist, I don't know that I am a fan of that. Especially because the trend now, from what I've seen, has been going more towards shorter albums. I mean, I haven't listened to either of them, but both Gunna and Young Thug's albums were under 20 tracks long. So, way more digestible by most people. And even looking at that further, they aren't really ones to put out longer tracks either. So realistically, you're getting an album that's probably closer to 45 minutes versus the hour plus that we've been getting for a while. And I know it's mostly a numbers game. Like, the more tracks you have on an album, the more streams you're going to get, the more potential for placements. But sometimes that kind of interferes with the whole artistry bit. And Uzi being who they are, I feel like their main focus would be more of the artistry and the music, because, like I mentioned, we're tying it all back together. This album has a whole lot of themes going on with it. You start out the project with something that's more traditional Uzi, the stuff that's more popular, the more hype, energetic songs. And then you start to go into the weird influence songs, if that makes sense. Like the sounds that may have influenced him as an artist. Like, we've got a bunch of interpolations of very well-known songs, as well as just straight up using them as a sample, which, can work to some people's advantage. Here, it's kind of hit or miss. We'll get into that as well. And then, we get into some randomness in between. Like, we have Just Wanna Rock in the middle of all, like, the covers and all that. And then the album ends out with, like, the most Uzi sounding ending with the end, which features Baby Metal, which, if you watch the trailer for Uzi's album, it sounds like it was that song playing in the background. It's just super anime sounding, and not a bad thing. But I say all this to say, this album has a bunch of different sounds going for it. This also shows off a lot of Uzi's influences and the way that he influences others. It is experimental. There's, you're going to get different sounds, and Uzi does those sounds pretty well, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest Uzi fan. That's, like, not by a long shot, but I went into this album expecting that I would be bored by it. I would not enjoy any of it. But honestly, I do like a lot of this project. The thing that really holds it back for me is that I can't sit here and listen to an hour and a half of Uzi going through different sounds and emotions and stuff that doesn't necessarily flow well together. Like, for me, if this project were to be split up into maybe 3 or 4 different EPs or maybe 2 or 3 albums, we would have a much more cohesive body of work and a project that people could be like, oh yeah, no, this is one of Uzi's best projects. Anyways, going back into this album and the tracks, most of it honestly sounds totally fine. I enjoyed the first like 7-8 songs. I think after Spin Again and That Fire, like I wasn't feeling it as much. Like that's the section I didn't like. And then Endless Fashion with Nicki Minaj is probably the worst Nicki feature I've ever heard because of the MAGA reference that she made. No one needs that in our lives. Like I know you're just trying to grab for something, Nicki, but that's not the way you want to go. You already have so many people against you. Anyways, but honestly, after that, I enjoy most of it again. Tracks like Nakamura and CS and Fire Alarm to an extent, I believe, and well, Werewolf too. Like they remind me of like early 2000s, mid 2000s, where everyone in middle school and high school was listening to like Linkin Park and System of a Down and all that stuff. So, you know, Uzi definitely comes from that era as well, and he's wearing his influences on his sleeve. And then, you know, the album ends out with the end with Baby Metal, which is a very interesting song to be playing as you're leaving for work in the morning, but it's there. But you know, overall, I really did not mind this album, and you know, if we consider the last 3 tracks that are bonus tracks as additional stuff, and we're only looking at the album proper, sure, it's closer to like an hour 15. Still, honestly, a little long, and I will say I have not been able to listen to this album in its entirety at all. Obviously, I'm not going to do it in one sitting. But when I do listen to it, I have to break up my listening of it with other music and other stuff in general because it's a bit much sometimes. But overall, it's really not a bad album. I know I kind of said a bunch of negative stuff about it, but if it was shorter, it'd be perfect. You cut this down to a good 35 to 40 minute long album. You got some gems in there. My favorite tracks I've kind of already mentioned. A lot of the first half, Flood to the Face, Suicide Doors, Crush 'Em, X2, and then like towards the back half, Nakamura, Just Wanna Rock, of course. But yeah, I did enjoy a lot of the album. I also do want to make it very clear that Uzi wants everyone to know that they're not gay. Anyways, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this project. If you've made it through an entire listen in one sitting, shout out to you. While you're down there in the comments, why don't you like and subscribe to see more ramblings, reviews, content, all the stuff that I do like this. And thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.